Holy shike, let's talk about pigs. Here's your host of the Pork Podcast, Jennifer Shike.
There's just something about the story behind the story. And as a storyteller, I'm always searching for ways to give readers just a little bit more. And that's what the Pork Podcast is all about, bringing you stories of the people and the progress of the pork industry. I'm Jennifer Shike. Let's go find just a little bit more. A quiet giant, inspirational. He lives what he loves. A connector, a living legend, always positive, of a select few. The ultimate recruiter, a trendsetter in the show ring, one of the best men I have ever met, an idol, goat, breakthrough, winningest livestock judging coach in the country. Diplomatic, innovative, a guiding light, humble, yet confident. When I started dreaming about the Pork Podcast, without a doubt, I knew that one of my guests had to be Dan Hoge. But before I introduce you to today's guest, someone I'll argue who really needs no introduction, I want to say a big thanks to United Animal Health for sponsoring this episode. You know, I would be lying if I didn't say that I was just a little bit nervous to talk to one of the livestock industry's greatest legends, my coach, my teacher, my mentor, and my friend, Dan Hoge. And it's not because Dan Hoge is hard to talk to. We talk all the time. But it's really because a short podcast could never do justice to help share his story. And there is no one who does intros better than Dan. One of the qualities that I admire most about him is his desire to get it right and the fact that words really matter a lot to him. And I think that holds true in my own life too. As a student at Blackhawk College East Campus, we'll just say a few years ago, I quickly learned that words wield great power. Whether that's in the reasons room and you have only less than 2 minutes to defend your placing, or whether it's showing your gratitude to a livestock breeder who has opened up their farm to let you judge their animals. Dan Hoge, I'd like to welcome you to the Pork Podcast. And again, I just want to say thank you for teaching me some of the very most important lessons of my life. I really can't wait to share your story with our listeners today.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. And it's great to be here with you and honored and humbled. I really am.
Well, I'm super excited to get into this. You know, we both have looked kind of over some ideas of things we want to talk about, and I don't know how we're going to get it all done in this amount of time, but we're going to try. And I think I'd like to start on something that's fairly general. You know, as agriculture continues to evolve and change, and as more and more generations become further removed from the farm or the ranch, the need for people like yourself who can educate and inspire the next generation of the livestock industry's leaders has never been greater. So, why did you choose to devote your life to doing exactly this? And kind of tell us, how did it all start for you?
That's a great question. And I've been asked many times how it all started. It actually started, I think, genetic imprinting and environment. My father was a very active, instrumental, purebred Duroc and Hereford cattle breeder. And from a very youth on, I was uh, totally involved with what he was doing and just followed in those footsteps, so to speak. Basically, it's been described that when I was very young, I was his shadow. I followed him step for step doing chores every evening. And when he would come home from judging a show or being on a type conference panel or being at a board meeting for the United Duroc Swine Registry, at that time, I just, you know, uh, I just would beg him and bug him, so to speak, just everything that happened, who he saw, what the livestock looked like, who won, who was disappointed, and all of that. So I basically grew up with that, and that was my heritage that really led me to pursuing a college degree and a life career in the livestock industry and youth education. Another person that I would always give a tremendous thank you to, the late Mel Fink. We were riding in a fall workout in the fall of my senior year when I was on the University of Illinois livestock judging team and riding from one workout to the next with Mel. He was with the Illinois 4-H team and a legendary coach at that particular time in the National 4-H contest. And he said, Dan, have you ever considered a career in extension education? I really had never given a thought to it. But at the same time, I spent the next 2 summers then, one after my senior year and two between grad years, uh, with the Cooperative Extension Service as summer interns, and thus that was the key and the catalyst to entering the University of Illinois Extension Service as a livestock specialist in Henry County, Cambridge, Illinois, and that took us eventually to Blackhawk.
So, how did you make that jump from extension to Blackhawk?
Well, that's kind of interesting because I was actually challenged with an adult livestock extension program, plus then the Henry County 4-H livestock judging team. And people don't realize, but I was only there 2 years, but we realized that was a real passion of mine, and we had one of our youth already make the state of Illinois select livestock judging team, Mark D. Decker from Cambridge, and thus when I made the choice to switch to move then to Blackhawk, it was interesting. Our first judging team was comprised of those seniors from the uh, Henry County program was really the basis for that. I had taught a part-time animal nutrition class in the National Guard Armory my 2 years for Mr. Eldon Opperly, the founder of our program here. And thus, when they told me that they would like to start a judging program at the new campus of Blackhawk College, they asked me if I would be interested. And yes, I was.
And the rest is history. And quite frankly, um, I think it's one thing to make that transition to teach, but you didn't just teach, you went on to teach for 5 decades. And, your service to agricultural education has gone on to literally change the livestock industry in my perspective. And I may be a little biased, but I think I'm just really well informed. I mean, more than 5,000 people have been directly inspired, educated, coached, or mentored by you. And I know that your retirement in 2020 wasn't an easy decision. But let's just be honest. I don't really think you've really completely retired, have you?
No, that's an interesting subject with Deanna, as many of you know. She thought I was really retiring, and I did from full time. And the greatest transition that was a benefit to Deanna and I and our family was that I simply walked away from coaching, and I don't mean walked away from it because I knew that. When Dr. Blake Bloomberg joined our faculty here, it was going to be a renaissance that we needed desperately. And I don't think maybe a lot of people were really ready for that or realized it was going to happen as it has. But it's interesting you say that, Jennifer, because when I walk into that silly auditorium, I cannot explain it, but I walk in that door and the light goes on and it's game on and I'm ready to teach. It's just one of those things that has happened. And with Blake's busy schedule, the fact that I'm able to help put the labs together in the fall animal science and speakers in the spring that you and Dan obviously are very instrumental in being a part of. And it was never intended that I would teach for 55 years, but at the same time, you just have to understand that when you see that student in an animal science setting develop a skill and perform a task for the first time in their life, when they stand up and that look on their face, if they've been castrating a calf or working livestock in a swine situation, I mean, that's what we do. That's why we do what we do.
Well, and I couldn't be more grateful for that. I mean, I'll never forget that your animal science lab allowed me to do things that I was never allowed to do at home on my own. I was able to do some of the jobs on the farm. We had Suffolk sheep until I was 14, and then we had a few sows for a while. We always had a commercial cow herd at my grandparents', and I grew up more showing horses, but I had the chance to be around livestock my whole life. But there were some things I didn't get to do until your animal science lab. That was the first place that I was able to castrate pigs. I remember implanting and just being so nervous about doing that at first. I mean, we even went, and I think it was it the ostrich lab or something crazy like that. I mean, we did so many things in animal science lab, and I look back and I think that was so formative to me to really understand animal science, not just what the book said, but to get my hands in there and to really try it out. Why do you design your labs that way? Why do you think hands-on learning is so important today?
I have a favorite saying, as you've heard me say more than once, and I really believe this. And the saying goes like this. It's not one that I developed, but I read it, and it is so true. And that is that, if you tell a student, they won't remember. If you show a student how to do something, they may remember. But if you engage the student, they will have learned. And thus, those labs that allow us in those days, and we don't have as many opportunities today in the lab settings to involve direct hands-on production skills, but we're still blessed to have an incredible baby pig lab down at Mark and Katie's at Good Hope, and we still have several really outstanding cattle labs. But we also have developed our labs understanding that not everyone is raised on a farm, and we have developed opportunities to develop niche markets in other species, such as now our alpaca lab that we attend is really one of the high profile labs that we do. A working sheepdog lab. We have an equine lab where everyone attempts to ride a horse, and I mean attempts to ride the horse. And so we are really trying to meet a wide spectrum of students, keeping them interested and keeping them involved, but realizing at the same time, everyone in that lab is a potential consumer of livestock products in their lifetime. And so transparency, animal care, they're stressed like we've never done before.
Well, I think it was pretty awesome for Dan and I, who are both former students, to have our daughter Olivia get to be taught by you as well, and to be able to experience life at Blackhawk, and just the stories that she shared about labs and the things that she's learned really give us a different perspective of everything, because we got so much from it. But it's incredible how you've not let up. It's just continued, and it's grown, and it's changed to evolve with the livestock industry, which is always changing. And I think keeps us all on our toes, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's going to continue to change. I try to tell students by 2030, 2050, just what will be expected of them. And I don't know, but I just have an idea that what's happened in Europe, we always say, they're 10 years ahead of what's going to be the natural norm here in the United States. And, how they will be allowed to raise livestock not only at the commercial level, but also, as you and I and all of us, many listening know, the show livestock industry is very, very important to all of us.
I wanted to quickly spend a few minutes on livestock judging itself. I mean, and you told me before that there's no curriculum in learning how to be a livestock judging coach. Coaching is 80% what's in your heart and 20% what's in your mind. Well, you make that sound kind of easy, and I don't really think it's quite that easy. But what do you mean by that? What does that quote mean to you?
The 80% has to come from within a coach, and it's really believing in the young people that are involved in your program, reaching out and knowing their goals and their interests and their expectations. And and livestock judging is a very inexact art, so to speak. It's certainly not a science, but it's an art or a skill. And it is so important that the student at every step of their developmental way feels good about themselves and that they are inching and making progress. One of the great stories I always tell about livestock judging, and it really isn't from the competition perspective, there was a young person a number of years ago from the state of Indiana that was enrolled in freshman livestock judging his freshman year, his sophomore livestock judging his sophomore year, and he never did compete. And I always thought it was really odd. He would go to workouts, hand in cards, never did participate in reasons per se, in even a practice sense, but he was always there. And the last class, spring of his sophomore year, he came up and said to me, he said, Mr. Hoge, he said, I want to thank you for the last 2 years. And I thought that was kind of odd because he really never competed. And he said, I know now I can go home, talk to my dad about the cattle in our cow herd, and that's all I really ever wanted to do. And so there's so many aspects of judging and developing the opportunity to, give reasons, describe livestock. And I have given students so many, maybe side thoughts over the years. I don't know if time this afternoon would give us that opportunity, but I remind the young judges that there's no show that is not important. How small, I've often said, if there's two-headed livestock at an event, that's a livestock show, and you give it your best, even if you're only going to judge a couple of head. I realize that's an exaggeration, but so many of our national judges, I don't know, we weren't doing it when Blake was here in 04, 05, and he and Ravenna were here, but we would always send our sophomore judges, one or two every year, to a local event at a small town called Alexis, Illinois. They would have this local show out on the baseball field, outfield, and you would give your reasons from a mic on a fire truck, the local Alexis fire truck. And it's amazing how many people that are now judging major livestock shows that started at Alexis, Illinois, giving reasons on a mic on a fire truck. So it's really not a question of where you start; it's a question of where you finish, and that has kind of always been the mindset. I remind our student judges over the years that even though the 2 years here at Blackhawk are very important in terms of competition and their successes, and we learn how to accept our disappointments. But there's only one real and really important livestock judging contest in their 4 years, and that is the national contest in Louisville. Because when you walk out of that 8 set of reasons in Louisville, Kentucky, and then you have finished what you've started, and those contestants that you competed against for 4 years and so aggressively now become your professional counterparts, industry leaders, and um, you all have that common goal. You finish what you started. And we're really big on finishing here at Blackhawk. Always have been. I know Blake and I have had those conversations, and to finish what you start, it's one of the real values you can take through in life. And so, I really have always stressed that. Um, and I don't know if we'll take time to talk about judging livestock shows, and I know one of those aspects, but I uh, I'll just leave that to your questions. But it's important that when these young judges start judging the shows, and I think most people realize that, I don't think folks realize that many major livestock show judges today and of the past start at county fairs and local events, and there's no one. And I often tell our younger judging generation that, believe me, they're not interested and how smart you are and how poor our livestock is. They're more interested in positivity, working with your youth, and making certain that every youth involved in that show felt that they had a fair look and that they have an opportunity to feel good about their project and themselves. I don't know if we have enough of that with our starter young judges today, because there's so many great talents out there, but at the same time, I sometimes think they need to stop, take a deep breath, and say, why am I here? I have often said this: uh, when you've judged for so many years, I've often said the smartest thing you can do as a show judge in a county fair, and I've judged so many in Illinois and Indiana, not as many in Iowa, but a lot of them. When you get out of your car on that morning and you're walking to the show ring area, study the pulse, study the atmosphere when you walk into that ring and meet the superintendents for the first time, and you get a pretty good handle on what's happening at the show, what the show is going to be like, how it's going to be handled, and that dictates then how you as a show judge are going to handle the situations and the classes that are brought to you that day.
Mhm.
You can tell I can talk a long time about this.
I know you can. And that I love that. I love that. Well, and I'll just go right into that because one of the very first memories that I have of you was watching you judge hogs at the Washington County Fair in Washington, Iowa. And I remember my grandma, who always had an opinion about every judge, say, well, now he can talk. He's the real deal, or something like that. And I remember thinking, well, yeah, she is right. Because when you stand in the middle of the show ring, people know that they are in the presence of a professional. And it's not just, in my opinion, the words that you're speaking about the livestock and how you describe the livestock, but it's how you talk to the kids. It's how you talk to the ring help. And it's no wonder that you've judged all of the livestock species and probably then some, because you conduct yourself in a way that gives the show management confidence that you're doing the job that needs to be done, but it gives everybody else that confidence that's there around ringside. And so, I just want to say thank you for that. And I can also say, having been on the side of running shows for nearly a decade as well, I know how important it is to have somebody who carries themselves professionally and with integrity. And it's not something that can just necessarily be, told to people, but you model it. And I appreciate you modeling that. So, how would you describe the ideal judge in the show ring? And maybe just to tie onto that, what is one thing that you think this next generation of livestock judges needs to keep in mind when they're going to judge these shows?
Great question. I've often said the most important aspect that a show judge brings to any event is you have to be comfortable and have an opinion and be solid in what your champion drive is going to look like. Now, show judges can only use what's driven or led to them, but at the same time, you need to know where you want to finish, whether it's a breeding cattle, breeding gilt emphasis, or whether it's a market-driven emphasis. You want your final drive to look as uniform and as current as you tried to describe that day. And I really feel that a lot of judges today are really doing a great work in that regard. The other thing that I think is so important to talk about with young judges is a fact that you are their guest, and you need to make them feel like their event is important to you as it is as important to them. And that's done just by the way you conduct yourself in the ring, getting to know the people at the desk. That is a key, relating to the announcer. You have to become a part of that event. I will say that there have been a couple of shows that I have been to that over the years that you always will remember. One was when the superintendent started to tell me about a family um, that had maybe had a few problems there at the show, and I said, now listen, you're talking to the wrong judge here. I'm here to judge every head of livestock in a manner that I'm comfortable with. And then, I'll never forget a show in the state of Iowa, and it can happen in any show. But there was an hour and a half delay because in starting the show because there was a protest against a family and an exhibitor. And you want to talk about awkward, starting a show at 9:30 in the morning that was supposed to start at 8, and then how do you start that show? But we had a great show, a great finish. But it's important to know that you are their guest and you are honored to be a part of their event for that year. And so many of our judges, I believe, are doing a great job with that. I know in watching some of the judges at the Henry County Fair and some of the prospect shows that Blake is part of here. This, you know, you just can't be prouder. Not that they all went through Blackhawk, but that they have a comfort zone that they're genuinely honored to be there as your show judge that day.
We will be right back after this message from our sponsor.
At United Animal Health, we all share a love for animals. We have devoted our lives to agriculture and to the well-being and productivity of animals. With our guiding principle to always have the best answer, we listen to the animal and let the animal tell us what works and what doesn't. We know that if the animal is healthy and productive, so is the producer, the consumer, and our communities. Learn more at unitedanh.com.
Well, and there's such a visible part of what animal agriculture is. You know, you think about the fact that our shows are a window into something that people today are, just like we said, are so far removed from agriculture. And so a lot of times the only chance they get to really see what we do is just when we're at those shows. And so as a judge, you are kind of that in-between person between the livestock and this crowd of people who may or may not be knowledgeable about what's going on. And I've been just thinking about that a little bit more, and I look at it a little differently just the older I get and the more I'm reflecting on my experiences running shows, but also being a parent of kids who show, also having been a kid who showed. um, I've judged a few, but I haven't really judged that many. And I'm not doing like what my husband has, but I've also been the wife of a judge sitting at the show. And so you really start to see this 360 viewpoint of the show industry. And I mean, I think there's no question you and I are both pretty passionate about livestock shows. And if it wasn't for you, I mean, I really don't know where we would be at with things like the National Junior Swine Association, because you were the one who encouraged me to apply for that internship. And I look back and I think of all the things that I've been able to experience through that time. And one of the hardest probably was realizing, guess what? Not everybody loves this as much as I do. Not everybody wants to see these livestock shows continue forever like I do and like you do. What do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions that people have about the stock show industry today?
That is a great question, Jennifer. I think one is um, they do not realize the time and effort from the whether you raise your breed and raise your own livestock that you show, or whether you purchase young prospect livestock and carry them out. People on the outside don't realize the time and effort and the cost involved in managing day to day, whether it be nutrition, whether it be health, whether it be performance, uh, and it is something that you just don't throw feed to a head of livestock, and then spend the rest of the day doing something else. You check them at noon. You just check them to make certain that they're cool, they're comfortable in the summer months when most of the livestock are fed. That to me is one of the really popular misconceptions that it is a commitment of time that you make, that if you're going to be successful, you have to make that commitment. And it is a family driven commitment. And because if you think of the families that have been so successful, and we all know them, but they make a commitment that is uh, a standard bearer to judge others by. It is so. that's really number one. Number two, uh, animal care. I think there are people that when we manage the weights on livestock are concerned that possibly, they're being mistreated, but not really, because we know in the human population, diet deprivation, can be in many most cases beneficial for human health. And so sometimes when we manage weight on some of the market livestock, especially, we keep in mind that they have plenty of water, they're comfortable. You'd feed them a small amount, maybe 2 and 3 times a day, rather than once a day or twice a day. And so once again, those misconceptions. I think are often. I know many people from an urban standpoint at livestock shows that I've been a part of over the years. They don't understand why there's not water in front of the livestock, throughout the day. Once again, in the swine industry, they're just going to play in the water and mess up the pen. Cattle will tend to drink better if it's monitored several times throughout the day, and so unless you are involved day to day, month to month in the livestock production sector, you can't expect the urban sector to understand the care and management, the great life that our show livestock have potentially compared to the commercial sector in every facet. So it's a lifelong commitment to just do things right, and always be a voice of positivity in the livestock showing industry. Be proud of what we do.
For sure. Well, I think too, you bring up so many good things, and so much of I think what's really great about livestock showing is all of the stuff that you do at home. I mean, because let's be honest, the shows don't really account to that many hours when you start to add up how much time you're investing in your project all year round. And so last
Exactly.
night we were all out in the barn. It's our weekly weigh and walk. We're doing our little analyzing as a crew. Dan makes everybody who's your favorite, who's your least favorite, and why. We have to give reasons, it feels like, on every pig out there. But it's our time as a family where we get to spend hours together, focused on a similar thing. And I think that's something that's so special. How have livestock shows been a blessing like that in your family? Because you have multiple generations that have been involved in this, and it's fun for me to think about all the generations and how they're all connected. But what do you think is one of your favorite memories, or one of the best things that's come out of livestock showing for the Hoge family?
Oh my, that would be a very lengthy list, but probably in our early years of showing, uh, Deanna's parents, the late Vernon Vernley Brewer, and the opportunities that they provided for our autistic daughter, Kathy. Without a doubt, uh, her showing through 10 years of 4-H and cattle, and her success that she had was due in large part to so many accommodating judges, so many ring stewards, so many beef show showmanship or beef show superintendents. Because in all of those years of Kathy showing, we had to have the cattle so tame, and she had incredible success, and it was a comfort level that she shared with those heads of cattle. And I often tell the story. Everybody was worried about Kathy out there in the ring showing these big steers, and we all were, but it wasn't about Kathy's steer. It was about the others. At two different county fairs, one time, she was knocked down by not her steer, but another steer that was tough to handle, getting loose in the ring, and we visibly watched the steers walk over her without injury to her. It was an amazing experience watching an autistic person develop as a show person, without a doubt. And winning the State Fair Open Show in 1979 with a home raised steer that we bred, and his name was Lightning. And even to this day, Kathy can tell you the cattle that she showed. She has a great memory for things like that. So that obviously is a highlight for Dan and I, that we look back, we don't know how we did it and how Kathy did it, because with Asperger's, her skills have deteriorated with age, and so that was great. Then Mark comes along, and he didn't have the early success that Kathy did, but he was a student of the industry, and a student. We didn't realize it so much at the time, but he witnessed how Kathy performed at the level that she did and what it took to get there. And then, in Mark's high school years, had success, reserve grand steer at Illinois, was doing better, was doing well in pig shows. But it wasn't um, you know, till Mark and Katie were married, and they started having children, and that's when things really blossomed. You'd have to say, in the Hoge family, multiple species. It is just amazing, uh, the knowledge base that the family has experienced, showing all four market animal species. And as grandparents, we try to make it to as many events as we can, but at the same time, and you and Dan know this, and other families know this, um, the time goes rapidly.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes Mark and I have talked, and Mark will remind me in a very positive way, Dad, you know how many years you were judging, and you missed some of our events, and so he's really becoming cognizant of that, missing a school event to judge a livestock show. But it's just something that has surpassed our expectations, really.
Mm-hmm. It's very special to be able to see families like yours build and grow and just continue finding new ways to do it too, to your point of trying new species and just expanding that growth. And speaking of expanding knowledge, I'm going to share with you how I go about expanding my knowledge. So part of what I do in these podcasts is I try to use my journalistic skills to dig a little deeper into your story. And so I do have the blessing of knowing a lot about your story because I've been able to work on different award packages and nominations and alumni organizations and all kinds of things we've worked on over the years. So you were maybe a little easier for me to dig and get some dirt on than others. So I did a little digging into what others have to say about you and decided to see what Blake Bloomberg, who is the livestock judging team coach at Blackhawk East and is one of your former students, what he had to say, because I knew that he would shoot me straight. And he pointed out some of the obvious things like the impact that you've had on so many students and the influence that you've had in the livestock industry far beyond the classroom. But he also shared something else that I thought was really valuable to bring up. He said Dan has been at the top of his profession for over 50 years, and he is still sought after for his input. And I just sat with that for a little while and I thought, that is just really incredible to think about. For 50 years plus, you have been relevant and are still relevant. And I just think, like, how do you do that? How have you managed to stay engaged and on top of industry trends and ideas during this time? I mean, I don't know how you do it. You still are today. Nothing's changed. But how do you do that? Because I think that's a really good example for us to think about in our own lives of how we stay relevant in what we do.
Yes, great question. And I rely on interest and passion. The number of shows that we still try to go to, listening to judges, um, talking to people in the industry, and the fact that Mark and Blake are judging so many shows right now I really look to those two, and I watch them all the time. I listened when Blake is teaching in the classroom. Mark and I have many conversations. Excuse me. Just in private. How was that show? What's going on? And it's just a passion of mine that I want to know what's going on and trends. We make a lot of decisions based on what happens on the pulse, what the pulse pictures look like, what do the backdrop pictures look like, what did that particular judge have to say, and then staying current with your breeding program at home. That's probably the greatest challenge, is knowing which, where are we going, where do we want to be next year, 5 years from now. And we've been blessed as a family to just always want to know just what's going on, who's calling the shots out there, and just the outcome of shows. It's hard to describe. Um, I ask Blake all the time. How much is too much bone, and we know that bone is a driving factor right now in the swine show ring. Also, to an extent in the market cattle show ring, and maybe to a lesser extent in the breeding cattle. But those are trends, and I've been through so many trends in the last 5.5 decades that but I'm very comfortable in the fact that when we were going through those decades of transition, uh, miles did not make any difference to me. If there was a symposium going on, or Harlan Ritchie was speaking about the cattle industry, uh, and those folks that were calling the shots, Chuck Olson, Earl Kane, what are they doing? What's going on? And there's always new breeders coming along that are going to dictate to a certain extent, where we're going to head right now. The great thing about the swine industry is you can change generations, even though they tend to be on 10-year cycles. But and I'm curious where we're going to be, in 2020, in 2030, and beyond in the show industry, in terms of pig type emphasis. Um, and I keep asking Blake, where we're going to be in cattle. And I think it's comfortable to say good cattle are always going to be in vogue. Um, and I really believe that. I don't believe, mature cow size is a concern, but at the same time, um, the cattle show ring is in good stead right now. Pigs, they got to be really out there right now in some of the visual characteristics. So, you when you live it, you learn it, and when you learn it, you do it, and so that's kind of where we are.
Yeah. Well, as a trendsetter yourself, I mean, everybody calls you the trendsetter, and so I kind of, I chuckle in my head a little bit when I listen to you talk about the trends that you're seeing, but also knowing that you have helped set a lot of trends yourself. What do you think are going to be some of the major trends that we'll see? Whether the livestock show ring or animal agriculture in general in the future. What are some of the trends that you're keeping an eye out for?
In the livestock show ring, that's going to be an interesting challenge because change is inevitable. In the swine show ring today, uh, I really believe that there will be a concerted effort towards female functionality. I think sometimes, because obviously hogs are litter bearing animals, barrows are worth so much, and to get that density of skeleton and that boldness and the inability to grow slow and grow hair, don't have real economic values, but at the same time, they are a trend that you have to be accountable for. But I think in the swine show ring, um, you know, functionability, mobility, longevity, these factors are going to be readdressed. We've been through that before. I think we're going to readdress it again in the swine show ring. In the cattle industry, the only, you know, the cattle industry, I think, is in great shape because why they're so fortunate, is an IVF. We're not asking a lot of show heifers to reproduce on a regular basis anymore. We're asking them to produce eggs, and then they're going to, they're not going to be asked to be in a cow herd, for 8 to 10 years. So from that standpoint, those are trends that the cattle industry is really, I think, in good shape right now, as good as they've been in terms of where we are. Uh, I may be wrong in that. I'm not a student of the sheep industry and the goat industry. I'm a student from the outside looking in. They're going to get Boer goats are going to get bigger framed. There's no question about that. Market lambs are going to be in bigger skeletons. Just that's a trend right now. Good livestock that are well balanced and have quality are always going to be in. But some of the most successful long term breeders have never changed. What they do is they catch the trends coming and going, and sometimes they're in the middle where you want to be, and then they enjoy those years of success. Uh, but we used to talk in animal science class about the bell-shaped curve, and the problem is when you breed average to average, or we say problem free to problem free, or we say that use the word complete. People often joke is there's a fine line between complete and common, and so where you as a family, the kind of livestock you want to show, not only the species, but what do you want to focus on? The female side, the terminal side, because it's not every family is blessed with that success. I'm speaking to a young person today. That's you that has been very successful in both sides. I see Blake Bloomberg not every day, but I mean what they're doing in the cattle show ring, and you know and in the swine show ring. Those families and those individuals that have that commitment to that, utilize their ability to the fullest extent, they're gonna they're gonna be strong, successful, um, because it's a family enterprise. But the thing that we never want to forget, and I know you've stressed this so many times in your public speaking, and is the fact that, like Katie Weisinger Hoge saying, the world needs more barns, and we need to spend more time with our families in barns, and you folks and the Bloombergs and the Hogs and hundreds like you across this country are doing that, and we're actually raising children through taking care of livestock.
hmm I'm pretty grateful to get that opportunity to do that for sure. And, as I sit here, it's just surreal to get to have this opportunity with you. Um, we've had so many conversations, but this has definitely been a lot of fun. But I do have one more hard question for you. What are you most proud of in your life? You've accomplished so many things, more things than I'm gonna guess you ever dreamed you could accomplish. I mean, these are just you've done things that I'm sure you didn't even know were things that could be done years ago. And as I look at like your applications for different things, I think, man, what have you not done? Um, but I would love to hear you say, what are you most proud of all those things?
Oh, without a doubt, what we did with Kathy, and then the family, Mark and Katie, and the family. Uh, without a doubt, I'm so thankful for my background through my parents, but and Deanna's late parents, gave Deanna and I the opportunity to develop a livestock program there that they were really a part of. And so, long term, and I tell the students in their classroom, I hope if they choose to marry and have a family, that they take every advantage of it, because, I'm proudest of just, when you see your children working livestock in the barn, or they're driving pigs for grandma and grandpa, some summer's evening, or looking at the lambs, or looking at the goat wethers or does, you know, that's what this is all about. And our dream is that they will be able to give back as they have been provided for. Um, and, it's just something that emulates you. You can't tell people to do it. You live it, every day. That's cool. Yeah, and it's cool to live in a barn.
It sure is. And I just want to thank you for setting an example for so many. I mean, you have changed so many lives directly, but you've also changed so many lives bigger than you'll ever know indirectly through the words that you've shared in the show ring, through a young person that you've mentored that's going on to help them in life. I mean, it's just the web of your influences is incredible. And I just want to say thank you for joining us today. And I also want to make sure to say thank you to this episode's sponsor, again, United Animal Health, a global leader in health and early swine nutrition, helping producers optimize performance from day one. With a one-of-a-kind pathogen surveillance program, United doesn't just track threats, they keep you ahead of them. And that's why United Animal Health says they are the name to know in pathogen research. Learn more at unitedanh.com. And again, thank you, Dan. I treasure all of our conversations, but I think this is going to go down as one of my favorites. And for all of you guys listening, go dive into more of the Pork Podcast on Farm Journal's YouTube channel and listen to it anywhere that podcasts are found. I'm Jennifer Scheich, finding the story behind the story.